The Prime Minister's planned election year reset went wrong yesterday. It started with a mea culpa, an admission, but not an apology for the mistakes made in the handling of the pandemic. Then one question derailed it all, a question designed to embarrass the Prime Minister. Text messages, a private exchange between a minister and Gladys Berejiklian from 3 years ago during the summer bushfires was read out at the National Press Club. It's, of course, only part of the story. The so-called minister hasn't been named. The reporter has let theories run that it was a state minister, but has refused to name that person. Matt Keane this morning is, of course, a state minister, and he took matters into his own hands this morning after noting the rumours circulating.
I've checked all my records. I've got no evidence that Gladys Berejiklian has ever texted me in the form that has been on the public record in the last 24 hours.
It's a very clear denial from you. Is that what you're telling us this morning?
Absolutely, Ben. Absolutely.
So let's go live now to Jonathan Lee in Canberra. We heard there from Matt Keane that it was eventually a very firm denial. Jono.
Very clear and quick to absolve himself, wasn't he, Laura? Scott Morrison has been out and about doing breakfast television this morning, which is normally an indication he either has a message to sell or an issue to dampen down. It is certainly the latter at the moment after the revelation of those text messages in which Gladys Berejiklian and a minister go on to have discussions where she says that he's a horrible, horrible person. The minister says that he's a complete psycho. She talks about him spreading lies and disinformation and being interested in playing petty politics at the time of the bushfire crisis more than 2 years ago. Scott Morrison was asked whether he's spoken to Gladys Berejiklian. He made clear that he hasn't spoken to her yet, but appreciated her sentiment late yesterday.
No, I haven't had the opportunity to do that, but I appreciate what Gladys said yesterday. In our own dealings with each other, it's always been very positive, and I think we've worked very well together as a Premier and a Prime Minister to do very great things for New South Wales in particular, whether it's building the Western Sydney Airport or getting the unemployment rate down, and particularly through the pandemic, we work very closely. So they're the results. I can't speak to the other things that are all anonymous, and as Gladys said, she doesn't recollect it, and it's certainly not a conversation her and I have ever had.
Laura, it's difficult for a number of reasons for Scott Morrison. He's obviously used his relationship with the New South Wales Premier at the time as a bedrock of his response to the pandemic. He also used it to burnish his own credentials, considering her enormous popularity. Now, the former New South Wales Premier issued a very brief statement after this all happened yesterday. She's gone on to say, "I understand there has been some commentary today concerning myself and the PM. I have no recollection of such messages. Let me reiterate my very strong support for Prime Minister Morrison and all he is doing for our nation during these very challenging times. I also strongly believe he is the best person to lead our nation for years to come." Now, the alternate Prime Minister has enjoyed the limelight as well. He's gone on to make sure Scott Morrison gets a thorough kick and says he doesn't deserve another term in office.